Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the show and welcome to episode 9 of the Twitter tutorial series. Today we have a pretty fun and exciting lesson, but I feel like I haven't recorded one of these Twitter videos in a very, very long time. So let's get started today by going over what we left off in the last lesson. All right, so let's go ahead and get started here with the simulator on the right side, and it's loaded up with our app in its current state. And at the very bottom of the list, you'll notice we have a lot of blank space, right? So this is missing a lot of the tweet information for the individual tweets in our application. And what I want to show you guys how to do today is to further flesh out the design of the tweet cell so that we can include the user's name and the username and also the tweet message right below those two strings. So the way we're going to do this is to first introduce a tweet model class or a struct inside of our project. And also I'm going to show you guys how to use an NSAttributedString to render out this nicely formatted text inside of one UITextView component. All right, so pretty good stuff. Hope you guys will enjoy today's lesson here. Let's go ahead and get started by going into the tweet cell. And the way I like to start off my tutorials is to do something a little more visual so you guys can get a feel for what's going on first. So let's go ahead and tab back over and look at this blank cell right here. The first thing I want to do is to include this text view inside of this cell. And to do that very easily is to say let message text view, or whatever you want to call it, be of type UITextView, set it equal to this block here. And inside of this block, I'll say let TV equals UITextView and return this TV guy right here. And some of you guys are probably asking already, why am I using a text view instead of a UI label? And the reason is because the formatting of the UI text view starts the text off at the very top, and for the UI label, it vertically aligns everything inside of the center. So that's why I'm using a text view instead. All right, so tv.text is going to have some sample text like that. So this gives us the message text view component in a couple of lines. So quite easy. And now that we have text view, let's add it to subview. Let's see, message text view like that inside of our cell. And let's try to anchor it inside of our cell right now. So how is it supposed to look like? You guys are probably asking. Well, the way that this is anchored is basically to the top of the cell, and then to the right of the image view, and then to the bottom of the cell, roughly the bottom, and then to the right of the cell. So to do this in one single line here is to say message text view dot anchor, and let's just use this extension anchor method right here. The top will be, you can either say top or self.top for the cell's top, and the left will be the profile image view's right anchor. So it basically gives us this edge right there. And for the bottom, we'll use bottom anchor for the cell's bottom anchor, and then the cell's right anchor like that. And for all of these constant values, I'm just going to use a value of 0. So I'm going to try to run this, and hopefully I'll get something to load up in my simulator without a crash. And it's going to take a little bit to get started here. So there we go. We have our some sample text inside of our UI text view, right? So pretty nice. One thing I wanted to show here is, let's say TV dot, see background color equals dot. Let's just use a value of yellow. I know you guys are probably tired of me using the color red. So let's just use yellow for a change here. So running that app now, I want to get a more visual kind of design here so I can see exactly where this text view is lining up. So it lines up right on the left edge of the right edge of the image view. So great stuff, great stuff. Now what I want to do is to introduce the information for this cell right here. And the way to do this is to kind of encapsulate all of the tweet information inside of a model class. And so let's go ahead and go to model group here and say new file, Swift file, and we'll call this a tweet. So this will be our tweet struct. So say struct and tweet. So some of you guys are probably wondering why we don't use a class. Well, for me, it doesn't really matter so much because the project is still so small, not a lot of code. So let's just use a struct instead. And the struct will include the user. So let user be user, and then also let message be of string. So this needs to be a capital user, I believe, like that. And then this will hold the information that belongs inside of this tweet cell. So the user's name and username, like that, and then the message right below. So we can build this project and we can run it. Everything's going to be a-okay. And now how do I want to use this tweet cell? So let's go back to home data source right here. And remember, the reason why we are getting two tweet cells is because we have two objects inside of this tweets array. And we're returning tweets.count, which is the value of 2 right now. So let's go ahead and modify this tweets array to actually construct these new tweet objects instead of these raw strings. So I'm going to say let tweets be of type array of tweet objects, and I will construct it using this block right here. And you'll notice that if I try to create a tweet like this, I don't get the auto-completion to show up properly. And the way to fix this is to do this right here. So return this empty array, execute this block right here. And I think if I do this now, I will get tweet like that, and I get this auto-completion like that. So sometimes the Xcode editor is not so smart. One of the shortcomings of Xcode and the new language of Swift. Okay, now that we have that taken care of, what do we want to fill out for the very first parameter of user? So I'm going to do something here that a lot of you guys will probably frown at. And I'm going to copy and paste all this code right here and paste it in here. So I'm going to say Brian user, that's just me. And for this user, let's just use that user. And some of you guys are not going to like this because normally you would have to refactor this code so that you don't duplicate all this stuff. And I'll perhaps show you guys how to do this later if we have the time to do so. All right. So the message here, we're going to type something out. Welcome to episode 9 of the Twitter series. I really hope you guys are enjoying this series so far. I really need a long text block to render out. So we're going to stop here. So that's our one really long text message right there. And one last bit of code to type out is to return this tweet inside of that array. So running this app now, hope you guys will have a guess as to what's going to happen. Instead of those 2 tweet cells at the very bottom, we are only going to get 1 like that. And the reason why that is again, the tweets.count now returns 1 instead of the previous 2. So that's why we get 1 cell. Great stuff. What I want to do is to include another tweet in here just to make it a little easier to visualize things a little bit later. So let's just do another bit of copy and pasting. Call this tweet2. Use the same user right there. And this right here will say this is the second tweet message for our sample project. Very exciting. It's the exciting message. ... There we go. Let's include this as the second tweet in our array. And so we're going to run the app now, and we're going to get 2 cells to kind of visualize the application a little bit easier for us a little bit later on. So we get that and that, right? Now the next bit of cleanup work to implement here is to include the entire tweet information inside of this cell. So the way to do that is to do a couple of things here. First, we want to try to override a property inside of tweet cell. So the way this works inside of LBTA components and the data source controller framework is that inside of each one of these data source cell guys, you can override this data source item with a did set block like that. And you can unwrap the tweet object inside of this did set. I'm going to say guard let tweet, I think that's a good name, equals this data source item, and we'll cast it into a tweet like that. And if we're not able to do so, we'll just return out of this entire did set block, right? And if we are successful in casting this item right here, we can say message TextView.text equals tweet. And remember, we have a message on this tweet guy right here. So if we try to run this, we would hope to get the message inside of that yellow text block. but I don't think we're going to see it. So we get that. We still see sample text. So let's go back to home data source to see what is going on. All right. So the problem here is that the casting isn't working. And the reason why it's not working is because we still need to modify this item function method right here. And basically the data source controller works like this. Every time a cell is being rendered out, it calls this method to send in the data source item. So what's going on here is that it's not able to, or it's actually sending in users instead of tweets. So let's fix this here and say, if the index path.section, if the section is the second section, which is 1, like this, so this means the second section, this section here, will return tweets like that with the index path.item, giving us the correct tweet for the correct row. So running the app now, we'll get a little bit of a nicer rendering of the message inside of the text block, right? So remember, doing this with the traditional UI collection view code is very, very verbose. So having this framework help us handle all of this code is very, very nice. Okay, let's now move on to a couple of different issues that I see already. So what I want to do is to include the username, Brian Voong right here, and build that app at the top of the text view, right? So some of you guys might try to do this at first, which is not the incorrect thing, but let's see, tweet.user.name, let's see, plus the message. And that'll give us the username and then the message inside of the yellow text block. So let's see what that looks like first, and I'll tell you guys what is kind of wrong with this. So we get my name right here, and then we get a tweet message. So the problem with these raw text strings is that you can't render them with any type of formatting. So what I mean is I want to have bold font for my name, and then some grayish font for the username, and then a different font for the message. So the way to do this very easily with one text view component is to use something called an attributed string. So let's do this right here. Let attributed, or attributed, can't remember exactly how that's pronounced. Attributed text equals NSMutable attributed string with a string and attributes dictionary. And this guy will be, let's see, tweet.user.name, gives it my name. And for this attributes, we specify a dictionary of objects to render out that bit of text. And if I specify NS font attribute name of UI font bold system font of 16, that'll give me a bold name like that. And for the text right here, instead of saying text, we'll say message text view, attributed text equals attributed text like that. And we can sort of either comment that out. Nope, looks like Xcode is not letting me comment things with the shortcut. I don't know if that happens for you guys, but sometimes the commands don't work inside of Xcode for me. So let's run the app now. And you'll see the difference inside of the rendering. So we get bold font like that. And to include the username on the right of the name right there, I'm going to say attributed text dot append this new attributed string, which is NSAttributedString string right here, with the same constructor of string and attributes. And the string will be tweet.user.username, and the attributes will be the formatting of something else. So the font will be of UI font. Let's use a system font size of 15. And then I can also include the NS foreground color, which if I say UI color dot gray, which gives me a grayish 15 system font colored text. That's what it'll give me inside of that yellow text block. So running the app now, we get this right here, which looks like that. So I can kind of get rid of the yellow background color just because I think it's a little hideous. And another thing I want to fix is that the spacing between these two strings needs to be a little bit wider, right? Currently there is no spacing. And what it needs to look like is that. So to easily fix that, we'll add in a space inside of this string. So let's say username string or whatever you want to call it be of this right here. And let's say space and this guy, let's say tweet.user.username. And this right here is called string interpolation, which allows you to pass in little string blocks to fill out the string a little easier. Some of you guys might not like that way, but it's actually preferred, I would say. So username string like so, and try to run this. Let's include 2 spaces. How about that? So this is going to give us that nice little space between the user's name and the user's username. That's how you would say that. So let's now append the message string onto this attributed text. Append this new string, attributed string of string attributes. And this will be the tweet.message like that. And finally, let's specify NS font attribute name of UI font. Let's see, what do we want here? System font of size, perhaps 15. I think that might be okay. And try to run this. So some of you guys that are smart might be able to guess what's going to happen with the rendering of the text here. So you'll notice that we are missing a new line at the right of the username right here. So because we are using string interpolation, we can just include a slash. This is a front slash. I think this is a front slash. And then a lowercase n gives us a new line, which renders out the text like this. Okay, so moving on to another issue I see right now is that the layout for the text view is a little off compared to what we see up here. And so namely, the spacing on the left of the text view and the top of the text view needs to be increased a little bit to kind of have a little bit more padding. So let's go to the tweet cell and message text view right here. We can easily modify the top constant to be something like 4 and the left constant to be 4 to just push it to the right a little bit and push it down a little bit from the top edge. So running that, we'll get a little bit more spacing for the text view, which makes our text look like this, right? And the one final thing I want to show you guys with NSAttributed text, attributed text, however you want to just pronounce that, is to, let's see, I want to actually modify the spacing between this right here and the message. So what you see right here is a larger gap between each one of the spaces, or the new lines rather. And to do that, I will just include something called a paragraph style for attributed text, which looks like this. Let paragraph style equals NS mutable paragraph style. It's a really long word. As a paragraph style dot line spacing equals, let's say, something wild and crazy like 10. And now we can say attributed text dot add attribute with this name, value, and range guy. So the name will be NS paragraph style attribute name, and then we have this value of that paragraph style. So for those of you guys that are wondering how I know this, is not because I read any documentation. I basically searched for this stuff inside of Stack Overflow. That's how I know how to do all this. So what is range, right? Range is basically going to be the entire range of the attributed string, which will be let range equals NS make range, I believe, with the starting point of 0, and the length will be attributed text string, which gives us a string, and then to access the characters, and then count, which gives us the entire length of the string. So having the range, let's fill it out here and try to run this now and see what the app renders with the line spacing of 10 for the attributed text. So this is going to be a very, very wonky design now. See, this is what 10 does for us, right? And so to make it so that it only shows up for the spacing right after the username, all we have to do is to move this right after the new line. So let's move this over here. Let's move this and put that there and try to run the app now. So basically, the range at this point in time will not include all of the message text. So rendering that, you'll get the spacing right there, and it won't affect the message part of the attributed text. So because the 10 value was just something I wanted to use for this example's sake, that gives us the very, very large gap right there. I'm going to reduce it to a value of 4, giving us a smaller gap. Okay, so running the app now, we get a very nice design like that. And you'll notice that we didn't really have to include a couple of other text components to render out this design right here, which means that later on when you come back to this text view, you can simply modify the design however you wish by modifying the attributed text. I think this way is somewhat easier, but some things that you might run into is that perhaps you want to truncate your text with ... There really isn't an easy way to do that using this approach. All right, that's going to be it for today's lesson. I hope you guys enjoyed the tips and tricks with NSAttributedString. Remember, source code for this project is down below in the description. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. In the next video, we are going to introduce more components and more UI views inside of our tweet cells to make the design look even better. And that's going to be it for me. Keep on coding, guys, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Bye-bye.